going to be our season finale session. That is, we will come back after a couple of months break with another session of season of PiCA Thesis Forum. So I welcome everyone, welcome my faculty colleagues and the students to this session. Today's session was supposed to be moderated by Sarvesh Nangirikar, but unfortunately he couldn't join at the last minute. Something important came up. So I'll request Kavita uh, Sawan to introduce today's presenters and talk about the topic that is there today about wellness architecture. Yeah.
Yes,
Go ahead.
thank you, Kavita Pradhan. Thank you. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce today's guest, Vaishali Singh and Siddhesh Bhandari. A small introduction. Siddhesh graduated in year 2019. Siddhesh, along with his two batchmates, Anushka Shadatpuri and Nitya Acharya, represented college at national level and secured second position at Transparency 13.0. Since graduation, Siddhesh has been fortunate enough to work with some renowned people in this profession. He is currently working at Desaria's Associate Mumbai. Being part of this design team, he has got a lot of exposure in institutional and commercial projects. Today, he will be briefly talking about his undergraduate thesis, research and design project, which focuses on design of healthcare facilities. We welcome you, Siddhesh. Our next guest, Vaishali. Vaishali graduated in year of 2016. She will be presenting her thesis, which was Care Center for HIV and AIDS Patients. She received a first runner-up position for Minal Panchal Architectural Thesis Award, and she also presented her work for COA NYASA. After working for an year professionally for her dad's firm and for the firm she had started with her batchmates, she joined University Lyon Urbana Champaign for Masters of Architecture. She specialized in healthcare and she was a member of Gargoyle Honors Society of Lyon School of Architecture. She also was a structures graduate teaching assistant for an year. Vaishali is now working for a leading healthcare design firm in California, US as a designer. She is majorly working on cancer hospitals, medical office buildings, and oncology clinics. She is also lead specialist in her firm. I think without wasting time, I would like to hand over this platform to Vaishali. Vaishali, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kavita ma'am. Thank you for
Welcome.
welcome and nice introduction. And I'm glad that I got to be a part of it. So, hello. It's good to see all the professors. Hi, Smita ma'am. And yeah, here I go. All right. Let me know if you guys can see my screen. All good?
Yes, it's visible.
Awesome. All right, so my thesis topic was HIV/AIDS Combat Center. So there are 9 steps that I'm going to follow to share my journey and the process. So first is going to be research method. Second is going to be the findings that I got by the research. Third is going to be the solution. Fourth is going to be the design. Master's work that I had, my takeaways from the whole process. My profession in healthcare, the designing that I've done so far, and how you can use thesis as your basis of your future career. So the first step is, how do I choose the topic? There's so many options. We always have in design dissertation, we get like this option of getting 10 topics and then come down to one, what we want. So you always have to question and ask yourself, what do you want? This is how I went ahead with my topic. I always wanted to work on something that serves a user group. I always wanted to see how design can help making their life better. So HIV/AIDS patients and their affected kids were the user group, which I thought of serving, and how I wanted to see how designing can help serving their life, as it's difficult for them to survive in here. They get abandoned by their family, they don't get jobs. So a campus that serves to their healthcare as well as their living, and how design aspects can make it a little better. Um, and design and well-being is something that summarizes what I wanted. So you must choose, you have to choose your topic and you need to justify it well. So you always need to see how you can justify it. My justification was the little awareness that India has for palliative and the end of life care. And I mean, there is no community which serves all of these purposes. I mean, there are, but then there are parts of it and not completely the campus that serves to it. Maharashtra is one of the states with high prevalence rate, and I think there was a good scope to provide facilities for these users. So Mumbai, there was a site nearby Cotton Green railway station that I got through Sarveshwar's help. There were like available sites by the government for healthcare, and this is one of them. And thinking about the proximity and the approach to the site made me choose the site. So the first step was to understand the user group and the requirements for them. I could justify 5 major user groups. First was the staff members because they take care of them. Second were the doctors and all the family members who are there with the affected people who are in there who come to see them. Their kids, because usually if a mother has HIV, it might get transferred to the kid. So that is there too. And the patients, of course. So after a lot of like research, it helps to summarize what you see or what you conclude. And I tried to summarize it in some bullet points and words. So if you see like quality of life is something that I thought about, and the words that can define those aspects. And when I'm designing, I can think about these words and implement these. The same is, so there were parts of it, and medical care was a part of it, where I thought about blood chemistry, hematology, like these are the aspects that are served in this. And the psychological support, as I told you, like they are not accepted really well in public background, and that is why this campus can help. So throughout there are 3 words: with psychological support, socio-economic support, which is by providing them a space for working or for sharing their knowledge or for exhibiting their work if they are artistic, and the medical care. So these were some of the findings when I read about what all architectural elements can help and how physical and psychological development can happen through spaces, and how natural light, accessibility, privacy, view, or recreational spaces can give some physical comfort and energy. And psychological aspect, like if you're sitting in the room and if you see a nice, beautiful view, maybe you can create landscape that can provide you that and make their day better, and interactive spaces where they can meet their fellow friends and interact and talk. I didn't follow healing architecture completely, but there were like few design elements in healing architecture that became a part of my design eventually, and that is how I tried to explain it. How I tried to merge green space within the design, and if you see the plan, you'll see how it bleeds into the whole design. So yeah, this talks about that, how I had solid builds, but then there were landscape areas coming inside and making the site more lively. So you see the transition of how a non-developed site with the building turns into a more interactive, active site by implementing those ideas. This was the whole design program was very much based on my case studies, and I was fortunate enough to visit these places in Bangalore. They have a lot of care centers. There were almost 5 that I visited, and every 5 had some spaces that I got to see could help my design. So if you see, like, there was a comparative analysis of these design spaces and even the type of spaces. I couldn't put those images because I cannot put it live. But if you see the sketches, it gives me an idea of how they had courtyard for interaction, or how they had water bodies for making space more scenic and beautiful. And then if you see and if you see the comparative analysis, there are points that you can see for each case study and how I propose the design program as per those points. So it's a good approach if you want to figure out what do you want exactly in your design program. Case studies are the best means for it. You always have to detail out your program a little more. You have to be very sure about what kind of space you want, what space type you want this medical care. Like I had medical care unit, childcare school, and then staff quarter and the cultural center. So medical care unit was for healthcare, and then the childcare for the kids who are affected, staff quarters for the one who are serving, and the cultural center is for their living and for work. So you have to decide the number of people who you can accommodate, and of course the users. So you can understand the type of space you need, and you need to justify why you need those spaces, because it just goes on, and you have to stop somewhere. So I think it's always good to have a medium to guide yourself, and these are like a good medium. Um, so then later on, when area comes into picture and you know what exactly you want in your design, it's better to go through like codes and see the requirement of each space and how in total, like guesstimate or estimate the spaces that you want and how much areas you want. Because I mean, what if you have an 8 feet wide corridor? Doesn't make sense. There is always a standard to follow. So it's good to bifurcate your spaces with areas so that you limit yourself when you are designing. So that was my chart to focus on when I was working on it. And then you can see the user group with the numbers of how many people are going to be there. So when you start, it's a lot of scribbling, a lot of searching, and that is how I started. I knew that there are going to be 4, 5 sections, but I didn't know how those are going to work out. So it was a lot of 3D, moving the spaces, seeing how the circulation works. Should the empowerment center should be nearby the entrance? Should the medical center should be in the end of the site for privacy? So it's more of how you locate those buildings and their accessibility from the outer space. And then as I could come down to one point where I knew where I want these 4 major buildings to be, I placed it on site and started scribbling that how do we connect it, because we know that Mumbai has a lot of rainfall and we always have to have like a connecting covered space for them to roam around, and you cannot just have open spaces all the time, and yeah, it's not convenient. So from blocking to connecting and to sketching of how you want it to work out, how those spaces are giving pockets of green spaces. Further clarification on the sketches. So if you see these 4 options, I worked more on how many levels I want it to be. Is it gonna look super tiny, or is it gonna look bulky, was an idea, and working in 3D definitely helps when you enter on site and when you see the space. So this was very helpful thinking about the codes and the areas, connectors. So if you see, like, started with the blocks, and then the first floor, and then the common spaces that you can see, and how you can include verandas in there. So if you see, brown color is the representation of that. And then also zoning, like private zone, semi-private zone, and public zone. So I tried to zone those out. And in the end, massing and the landscape. So if you see the plan, that's how the fluidity works. If you see the east side, you start from the empowerment center with a nice courtyard and the spaces for interaction, for sharing, conference areas, counseling rooms, art space, museum space, connecting to the admin, where like if you see there is a separate entrance from the admin. So if there is a car or loading, unloading, because you need to think about those services part too when you're designing how a van is going to enter, a pedestrian is going to enter. There is different entrance requirement for each. So it goes hand in hand. I know we all get really creative when we are designing, but we always need to think how it's going to work out, because that is the most important part. And if you see it, so going to the west side, it connects to the admin and then the medical area. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor. And then the school for kids. And in the end, if you see the staff room area. And then with the beautiful, nice, huge landscape spaces, which also includes like space for vegetation, which was one of the observation from my case study, with like interaction and interactive spaces, space to play as well. So yeah, that is the rendered plan to explain those activities in there. There's a nice section where I try to actually think about the materiality too, how the structure is gonna look like, the colors, material. Do I want to highlight? I think when I was in the final year, I was very fond of highlights. Professionally, it's difficult to follow, but at that time, I did use it as a design element. And then a section which shows the landscape, the structure, and how it connects with an ISO, where you can see the structural column levels and the roofing. Also, I think detail is a very important part when you're doing thesis. You need to talk about how your structure is going to work out. I did put skylight, I did put the detail. I also talked about why I need it, how female ward will get like nice lighting, how a double facade can help to maintain circulation and ventilation, how an angle in a louver can stop or regulate wind and sun. So those were the design elements and idea, which I tried to explain through the sections. And then services, of course, I calculated for sewage treatment, I calculated for the overall water required, and I think there was a rough planning. I followed the codes and tried to figure out if I'm getting enough water treatment space and enough water for the users. So yeah, calculations help. We try to run away from it, but eventually it helps. So you can go ahead and look for that too. These are some of the views that try to explain my space that I try to create through the design. So if you see a nice entrance with the courtyard, a childcare home with the courtyard again, so there was this meditation space in the end of my plan. So if you see here to the southwest side, there is a way to go to the meditation space and isolate yourself if you want to sit back and meditate. So that is the way to it. All these elements created created a nice gesture and welcoming space, and eventually coming down to the meditation space. And then I think it helps to see the views, definitely helps to understand the quality of space. So I used quite a lot of views to explain those things and how these spaces are looking. So yeah, I think the entrance, the landscape area, the entrance to the school, the bird's eye view of the whole site with the central landscape space. Yeah. And then some more views explaining the overall planning from the meditation side, from the medical care side, and finally, with the help of some of my juniors, and me, of course, I decided to show some materiality through my model, thinking about how colors can help when we are actually designing in there. It doesn't give you a very clear idea, but it takes you somewhere where you can imagine how it can look like if you're going for these colors. So I tried to do that in there. Yeah, so this was my thesis part, and I wanted to know if you guys have any question, or do you want me to continue? Kavita ma'am, what do you think? Should I continue?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
So yeah, I think after thesis, thank you. After my thesis, I realized that I think this is something that I'm gonna continue. But then masters happened after a year of working, and I think after 5 years you realize that school is the time when you can experiment and do all the things that you want to do, because professionally it's difficult to follow it. So I decided masters was going to be that time. I did that in undergrad too, but then that is like with one experience and then you continue with another. So that was the idea. So I did that. And as it was my time to explore, I went and I thought I looked about and worked on high rise. I worked on urban infill buildings. So urban infill buildings are usually like in the downtowns in the main city in here. They are back to back high rise buildings, and you have like two common walls, and it just goes continuously all throughout, and just the front and the back is open. So you need to create a whole building within that space. And the co-housing community, which is like a cultural community in the US, and how that works. So try to touch all those parts that I could do, like work on in designing. So this was my first or maybe second project, a high-rise building where we were fortunate to have a project where we could replace Trump Tower Chicago and design and talk about our own version. This was more of vertical interaction. Of course, we have done so much of planning and zoning, but this was everything in the sky, not on the land. So it was a different experience where I tried to understand how the vertical circulation works, how you divide the spaces vertically. It was like all vertical experience, and how the structure, especially when you're working on high rise, is a very important part, and how you're going to work on it. So those were the aspects. So if you see the graphics, we tried to explain the concept. We tried to explain through colors what all spaces are going to be there. So like the offices are in orange, the purple part talks about the hotel, the yellow part talks about the residential spaces, the condominiums, and the top part is talking about the restaurants and observatories. So there's always a reason behind these spaces. Like if you have an observatory in the top level, you can see the whole view and you get more revenue out of it. So there's always a reason for these spaces. Some of the renders that talks about the space. This was one of the streets from where we could see, like, we can see the Trump Tower right now, but we replaced our building with that and see how it looks like. And then the section talks about the structure, how we were using columns, and how we were using concrete, and how the facade worked out. Second was, of course, the urban infill. This was my favorite because this was a challenging site with 17 feet wide and 39 feet deep space. And we had to create like a long, tall building in there. So a very narrow site and the designing in there. So if you see the concept, we tried to bring in like some green space in the middle of the building, and how that can help the residents to enjoy. And then a section talking about the activities. So if you see, so this was an artist live work space, as this site was just right opposite to the Chicago Art Center. This was an extension, a proposal of an extension to it. So for the artists, they can live and work in there. So there was a living space in the top area, and then the central space for exhibiting their work, and the lower spaces, central spaces for the interaction with the school, which was connected to this building, and the lower spaces for exhibiting. So I tried to work on a lot of softwares, and Sapphira was one of it. Sapphira is a analysis, like the daylight analysis software, where you can understand how much light your building is getting and how much you want wanted to work out how much it's affecting the overall energy of the building. And the last but not the least, this was my final year project where it was more of the cultural aspect of the US and how we actually buy houses in a co-housing community and how we interact. So this was more of planning and how you blend in landscape and opportunity to interact. And then again, I worked on Sapphira as I knew I wanted to learn more about it and how passive houses and zero energy building works. So this was the idea to initiate in the whole planning. Yeah, so this is my master's, and then thinking about the takeaways from your undergrad to your grad journey. I think for me, the takeaway was my technicality was my strength because I was always into technical aspect and how I was always focused on the health and well-being part and how I want to work on the better well-being of how architecture can help for health and well-being, and that is why I concluded that healthcare is my interest. So right now I'm working for Boulder Associates. It's a leading healthcare design firm, and they do lots of different types of hospitals. I usually work on cancer center and oncology clinic and primary care. So these are some of the work. I've been in this field for 37 years, so they have a lot of experience, and I think I'm enjoying it so far. It's been 1 year, and yeah. And these are some of my work that I've done so far professionally. And it's right now getting constructed. Hopefully, once it will be done, I'll be able to share it with you guys. But yeah, that's what my healthcare journey looks like. And last but not the least, thesis plus profession. Undergrad thesis can help you to streamline your goal. So think about how you can maybe take a first step and see if that can help all throughout, and how you can take this study ahead in the future. It's not mandatory. You can switch, you can swap, but it's good if you can think about it. Yeah, that's it from my end. Thank you. Any questions, or are we continuing with Savesh?
Yeah, we'll go ahead with Siddhesh. Siddhesh, are you there? Vaishali, you like to start?
Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, thank you guys.
And we will take questions in the end all together.
Sure, sounds good.
Ma'am was my thesis mentor for an year, so she guided me really well. And of course, thank you to the college for giving me this opportunity to present the thesis on this platform. So today I'm basically going to talk briefly about my thesis topic, which has like 4 parts to it, which is like and how to go ahead with your thesis. So it's basically my thesis journey in a presentation. So first of all, I'd like to talk a few words about how to select your own thesis topic. So selecting your own thesis topic is not like an overnight thing. So for that, you'll have to think about it for like from the start of your architecture journey. So basically, the first and the foremost thing to select your thesis topic is that your field of interest. You should figure out what the field of interest is and think what you want to learn new. So for me, healthcare was never been a part of my academic syllabus for the first 4 years. So I was very curious about what or how an healthcare facility works. So this formed the basis of like taking healthcare as my thesis topic. So as you all know that thesis puts you in a zone where you can learn or gain information about a topic that you want. So that's how you select your thesis topic. And also, I remember a thing that during the initial years of my college, I got a chance to work with Vaishali on her thesis topic. So that was like the first step towards healthcare design in my life. So, and also Vaishali has been an inspiration to many of our juniors and my batchmates. So this was probably the first step why I chose to select healthcare as my interest. Uh, so, what is an outpatient care center? So, basically, outpatient care is a part of your hospital building. Like the hospital building has two parts to it: it's inpatient and it's outpatient. So, it can be either part of the same building or it can be a separate building in itself, and or it can be a complete individual setup in itself. So an outpatient care setup is basically it has consultation, diagnostics, and observation of the patients and treatment zones, and they also provide rehab care. But all this is done on outpatient basis. That is, then there's no overnight stay to associated with it. So basically, the point that came out during the initial days of my research was everyone was asking me why you're proposing an outpatient care center and why not a complete hospital. So they also like tagged it as a very small project for a thesis level. So basically, what I feel is that you cannot tag any project as a thesis level project just based on its size of the project. So yeah, so there were many aspects related to why I selected this as my design project and why not a complete hospital. So during the initial days of the study that I made on healthcare projects and the healthcare system of a city, it basically showed that it lacks a lot on the healthcare facilities that can be provided on outpatient basis. That is, people the condition is that it was designed for about 7 million people in that time, but it currently is catering about 13 million to 14 million people currently. So basically, what are the main findings were around my site was that Mumbai had just zero point 0.9 beds per 1,000 people, which is much less than like most of the foreign countries and foreign places. So it should be at least 25 or 30. So basically, it's a very noticeable number that we need to cater. So also the other aspects are like the day surgeries and everything. The centers which provided day facilities were quite less, like zero point 0.4 centers for a million people for day procedures, and then a lot of people require day dialysis treatments and cancer treatments that happen on a daycare basis. So almost 95% institutes do not provide that. So this was also a main reason why I chose not to set up a complete hospital, but just to focus on the parameters that cater all these setups. And basically, the diagram on the right shows the public healthcare facilities and my site location in yellow. So most of the public healthcare facilities are quite far away from the place of my setup. So coming to after deciding a topic, you need to do a brief research on the user group that you're catering. So hospital or any healthcare uh, setup has basically three user types. So it's like the doctor or the staff of the hospital. There are like patients, and then there are patient family members which are associated with them. So these three users need to be studied thoroughly before you start any healthcare design program. So evidence-based designing is basically what you do beforehand to get a like direct user study from the user itself. and you figure out the problems related to the space directly. So it has evidence-based designing has three parts majorly. So how you do it is like you select a place of the issue where you are supposed to deal with the three typologies of your user groups. Then you interview these people in person, and also you can try out Google surveys. So this is what I did. So I got into a public medical hospital for my observations and took out many interviews from the people of the various user groups. So this was basically done by formulating a questionnaire survey that had been specially designed for the user groups. So you hand it over to them, so it can basically give you a rough idea how the people feel the space and how how they want to feel like. So your questionnaire survey can basically have information about the things that you are not aware of, or it can be just reviews about the space that the people are already using it. So these are the basic conclusions, or what I can say, the conclusions from the surveys that I got online and in person. So there were a few pointers that I needed to follow, like wayfinding. Wayfinding uh, is a very important factor in healthcare buildings, as to find various departments around it and not to get lost inside structure. Because healthcare structures are like they can easily be distract you from your department of need. So wayfinding was the main issue in most of the healthcare buildings. Then there was natural lighting and waiting experiences of the people, then waiting areas for the family, staff, and then it was basically outdoor spaces that you need to relax yourself from the stressful environment that happens inside. Uh, the initial survey that I showed was basically for patient and the family. And the next for the staff members. The staff which caters to hospital almost 15 to 16 hours a day will need some spaces which will like psychologically help them to relieve themselves from the stress that's happening inside, and also give them a break from the work for a while. So the basic public hospital that I chose had a very not pleasant environment inside the structure for the staff that was working over there. Like there were many less spaces given for breaks and lunch areas, etc. So basically, these were the findings from the research that I made, and the conclusions were jotted down, and then a certain typology was formed during the research stage that I needed to follow during the design stage. Like the parameters that you get research stage should be incorporated in your design stage by like if you are concluding that there need to be more bake spaces, or you need to improve the privacy of a building or of a department. So what can you do to do that? So there will be a permutations combinations related to that. Then after the permutation combinations, you get to a design wherein you can propose a typology where you can give buffer areas between consultation rooms and waiting rooms that would provide a buffer for the doctor, and also will give a sense of privacy inside the clinic. Then there are patient rooms where you need good views and a good amount of natural lighting and everything. So which conditionally lacked in most of the public healthcare facilities that we look in our city right now. Also, the waiting experiences, as you'll see in the further PPD slides, I'll show it to you in detail. So, to make better experiences for the people to wait inside the structure, you need to have clean and well-lit spaces, and also you need to have some kind of privacy while you're inside the department. So these are some basic schematic sections that I worked out in the initial days of the research. So what I realized that there were four basic factors associated to any research conclusions. So I termed these factors on the headings of functional, psychological, physiological, and social. And there are some facts that are connected to these parameters which you need to follow. So functional aspects, if you need to improve the functional needs of a space, you need to consider the adjacencies of the space. Zoning should be as per the functional needs of the space. Also, to reduce the walking distances and wayfinding to make it easier. So the ideas are the things that you give as a solution to the facts and the needs of the factors that you're shortlisted. So basically, the ideas were put. Uh, the ideas were put into consideration while designing the final outcome. The second part to the methodology of the research phase was precedent studies. So precedent studies come in formats, like you visit the space actually, and then you refer international or national case studies online or through a book. So to know a healthcare facility completely, I started from the basic unit of a healthcare facility, which is a clinic space, which is easily accessible to anyone, an individual clinic like your physio or anyone. Then there are specialty clinics and specialty clinics like dermatology and dental, which have a complete different setup than an individual clinic. So to compare it with the individual clinics, you need something more prominent and like you get some more information. So I shortlisted a few small private and small municipal hospitals, which are like 10 to 15 bedded hospitals, like very small. And then I had researched two big hospitals, like 500 bedded hospitals. The culmination of all the 7 live case studies that I did were then put into individual comparative analysis. So that basically, and then there were 2 international case studies which were referred from the book to compare it with what we get to see in our city. So precedent study, these are some examples of the live precedent studies, like how you do it. Like first you go to this place and sketch it normally and observe it while sitting there in the space for about 2 to 3 hours. Like observe the pattern of how people walk, how people communicate with the staff members. Do they feel safe inside the structure, or do they need any other thing which is not provided in the current setup? So you note down the pros and cons of each of the setup, and which would help you in your final design outcome. So these are case studies of some bigger hospitals that I visited. So the bigger hospitals will normally give you bigger problems and will have to figure out newer solutions to them. So this is one of the case studies that I found in Mumbai. So there were many pros that I found from the design, which I jotted down and which I wanted to put in my own design. So that's how you study a space, that you figure out the possibilities that you can have in your own design. Also to observe the problems in the current setup. So basically the other 2 are the international case studies that were just to get an idea of what kind of design structures are happening outside our country and what kind of architecture they follow. So the pros and cons are basically the design features that I liked in that and which are not provided in our city or our pace of work. So, the design features that I basically took from this are how they control the daylighting aspect of their setup and how the wayfinding and walking distances were reduced. So, because walking distances and wayfinding are the most important pointers that you can work on in a hospital setup. So the final part is the comparative analysis, which will finally give you your design brief. So the comparative analysis of the structures that you analyzed will probably give you an idea of how the structure lacks a quality and how the structure will gain a quality. So this is an important step in making your design a bit better than what's actually provided in the city. So this design, the factors that I compared gave me an idea of what kind of design features can tackle those problems. So this, all the research is concluded into these pointers, wherein these are the pointers that are essentially required in your design. Like you cannot go ahead in your design if these pointers are not satisfied. So basically, it's design, making it the design simpler and the design brief easier for you. Uh, so your research program is basically a process in which you'll figure out what kind of design ideas you need for your structure and what kind of design brief you need to follow. It will also give you the parameters that you need to provide extra for your users to feel happy or make a space better. So what kind of, this is a normal bubble diagram that usually we follow while designing an healthcare setup. So you have a main central area, then you enter the main central area and you have all the other departments around it. So the walking distances are reduced, but when I did the massing with this module, there were 3 to 4 options that I made for that bubble diagram, but it was not satisfying the needs that I actually wanted in my design. So it were like a lot of combinations that went behind it, but there was nothing as such coming out as a positive design solution. So I thought of changing the design bubble diagram with according to my design intervention. So this is the updated design bubble diagram which I got from my observations and research. So this basically gave me another look towards my own design program. So I basically started with a single block which had all the requirements of my structure, like the complete areas of the structure. Then the basic requirement for my structure was to get in more light. So I added a central courtyard which will like provide more light all over the structure. Then further developing the form, you need to change it a bit in heights and spaces to increase the volume of your spaces and also to provide lighting all over the space. So you stagger it a bit, and then there's staggering also helps you in having cross ventilation throughout the structure. So after a few combinations, this is how my final form looks like. So the basic concept behind it was like having various modules connected to a single corridor, which runs straight, and there's no way you can get lost inside the structure. So there are like 2 corridors in my structure which are connected to the various departments that you can see. The square blocks that you can see are the various departments, and the green blocks that you see are the buffer spaces between the departments. So the spaces were basically uh, typology. The spaces were basically segregated into 3 types. There were open or soft spaces, there's semi-open spaces, and then there were hard spaces. The spaces, the first 2 types were like it were public areas and gathering spaces or waiting areas which were not having any rules or regulations related to healthcare setups. Because there are certain parameters that you need to follow when you design a healthcare area. So these open and soft areas were not having any such kind of setups. So these places can be adjusted according to my needs. But the hard spaces were like I need to follow certain regulations while designing those areas. So this is basically how the vertical zoning happened. So the vertical zoning is basically as you go towards the upper floors, the amount of privacy increases. And then we have a service zone, which I put in the basement, which was not at all required to have any access by the public that roams around the structure. So basically, the first floor is outpatient clinics, and the emergency areas. Then the upper floor, you get specialty clinics and some other break spaces and some common features that you need inside the structure. As you go up, there's the OT and there are day procedures that happen which require more amount of privacy than the other spaces. So on the top floor, I have the admin area, which has the least, which needs the least disturbance from the public circulation that happens around the building. So this is how the basic zoning of the structure was done. Coming towards my site was located in Mumbai, so it was just connected to the Eastern Express Highway near Pandu. So it was, according to the DP, it was proposed as a healthcare setup plot, and also the plots adjacent to it were all residential areas and public parks, etc. So it was a perfect site for proposing a healthcare unit. So there were basically no industrial areas or any other things that would probably disturb the working of a healthcare setup. So looking at the site plan, I had two accesses. One access for the patient and one access for the staff entry was given from two opposite directions. Like from the north, you have a regular access for the patients, and from the east side, you can have a staff access. So this basically segregates the staff and patient entry and avoids major gathering at the entrance. And also there was a separate entry provided for the services that were proposed inside. So this was the basic plan. As you can see, that there were two basic corridors that run throughout the structure, and all the square blocks are basically the individual departments of my structure. So to make it simpler, I'll just color code it with the types of spaces that we segregated earlier. So the red are the hard spaces and the green ones are the soft spaces that you can see. The hard spaces are placed like there was a condition for placing soft and hard spaces around the structure, for which the lighting played a very important role. Like the soft spaces and the semi-soft spaces should preferably be placed on the external facades as they require maximum lighting and ventilation. And the hard spaces can be provided inside the structure wherein there is less natural light and ventilation available. So this helped in like zoning the soft areas in a better way. Then we add the services part. So the services are much important in a healthcare specialty facility. So there are, I guess, yeah, you can see the services. Like to show the services, I've chosen the operation theater wala plan. So there's operation theater on the left side, and then there's my daycare procedural unit on the right side. So there are a lot of services that go inside the healthcare facility, like apart from the normal drainage, water supply, etc. There are facilities and services like medical gas layouts, then HVAC, then CCTV areas, etc. So this is a schematic layout for the medical gas that was worked out for this structure. So basically, it's like 4 gases that you need inside a hospital layout. So you color code it according to the needs of the area. Then there comes the planning of operation theater. Like apart from the design aspects that we consider normally during a thesis, there's the planning. The hospital design mostly focuses on the planning aspects of the layouts. So basically, the OT, what I'm meant to say is there are certain regulations that you need to follow when you're designing a healthcare specialty clinic. So there's, to give you an example of a space, there's an OT complex. If you consider an OT complex, there are 3 respective zones that you need to follow. So every zone has different rules to follow. So you need to follow circulation in that zone. So if you are starting from the protective zone, you enter the clean zone, then you enter the sterile zone, and there's no way you can travel back into the opposite direction. So that's how it's planned to keep the OT sterile and to avoid cross contamination. So that's how I'd like to conclude my presentation. There were some views that I'll show you. This was the central main gathering area that you enter directly into this large space, and you subdivide yourself according to the departments that you want to follow. So the smaller pictures that you see are the problems that I have observed during the research stage. Like there were overcrowding at spaces, there were not enough lighting, not enough natural lighting, there was no ventilation. So the lower renders that you see are solution to what problems you normally see in a healthcare facility. So in case of staff members, you see there were no proper sitting areas or break areas that were provided. On the left, as you can see, these are the healthcare workers that how they work during the break hours. And on the right, if you see, it's just an attempt to make their daily experience at a space better. Then the corridors. The corridors are one of the important members of your design. So the lower pictures that you see are basically what you get to see as a design in the current setup. So there's no natural lighting, there's no ventilation to the corridors, and you usually see they are dull and monotonous. In my design proposal, I tried to make it as a solution to have it well lit and well ventilated and not to make it monotonous. And I also added some extra sitting areas around the corridors for the family member. So this is the final view of this construction. Thank you. Kavitam, would you like to take it over?
Yeah, that was really nice presentation, Siddhesh. And I really enjoyed seeing your views and how you compared with the existing case studies which you have done, the studies which you saw, the typical hospitals, and then how your solution takes care of various problems. So that was very interesting. And interesting, Vaishali, your presentation too. Now, I would like to check if from students or faculty who are present here, would they like to ask any questions here?
Yes, Kavita, should I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And ask a question? Okay. Both the presentations were wonderful. Great job, guys. I have a question for Vaishali. Vaishali, currently you are working majorly on medical office buildings, hospitals, clinics, and after working professionally on such projects, and when you look back at your thesis, what are the major differences you observe when it comes to designing a hospital in reality? Is there a variation in setting up the goals for the project or the way design process is carried out? I think we would like to hear more about your experience in this field.
Thank you for the question, ma'am. Firstly, I would like to say, Siddhesh, you have taken your project to another level of where I started. Amazing detailing. It was really nice. I like the way you explain spaces and really impressed by what you did. So great job. All right. So coming back to your question, thank you so much for the question, ma'am. I think after 4 years, when I look back at what I worked on, there was so many things that I wanted to fix. But I think that is the journey that I've been in now for past 4 years. Realized that I think when codes come into picture, when the rules and regulations and especially California Building Code has their own way of designing comes into picture, it's more of coordinating both the things together, which we had leverage to actually go beyond it and experiment. Right now, as I'm working with professionals who have been into this field for 30 years, they are very well aware of the standards, and it's easier to like just see and interact with them and just follow the standards, because I think healthcare has this certain language and the standard which we follow in most of the designs. It's just more of technicality and detailing that we focus on, and I think it changes as per the situation. Like COVID is changing things now. So
Yes.
many up been there. And yeah, I think structures as well. Now I have consultants around to tell me what is right and wrong. Back then we were the consultants, we were the designers. So yeah, there were some technical aspects which I think I didn't think of 4 years back, but now when I look at it, I know what could have been fixed. Yeah, I think it's the experience. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Vaishali, if I may just add to Kavita's question, you mentioned about the very strict codes that are there in the state of California, and I believe that is the case for all building types there in the US. And we have always over here in Bombay, somehow we are always under the impression that the building codes kind of hamper our the architects' visions or creativity. We have a tendency of looking down upon the building codes, and of course there is a lot of underhand dealing that takes place over here, which is considered to be a great thing. But in the US, the architects work very strictly with complying with the codes, and everything that we see, of course, what is being built, all the fantastic projects also are actually compliant with the codes. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience? So does working with the codes, having to comply with the codes, actually hamper an architect's creativity, or it helps the architects? I'm not only asking from the point of view of healthcare facilities, but this is a general question.
Thank you for the question, ma'am. That's actually a very nice question. And I always think about it if it's like restricting our ideas. I think permits and bids do help. We try to go out of our way and try something new. And when we take it for city permits or like OSHPOT permits, and they're new, they keep updating their codes every year, and we keep updating our way of designing every year. And it's a major thin line that we have where the reviewers tell us, okay, this might work out, this is something new that might work out in our codes, this is something which is still not recommended, so can you change it? So it's a lot of back and forth with the government and our conversation that we try to bring in and try to go beyond what we have done to see if this is going to work out, and if it does, we accept it and we go ahead with it. So we're glad that we have that transparency, and they are very quick replying to our comments or questions, and they send like a list of things that can be fixed or which are good. So it's easier to work on that and experiment and see how new things are going to work out.
And you do realize that actually, building types like hospitals, healthcare facilities are quite complex, and actually is a work of a great amount of collaboration of different consultants. So therefore, to attempt it as an undergraduate student itself, I think is an achievement, and both of you have done great justice to your work. And yeah, no, really. So it's there's a lot of learning that takes place over there, and of course you realize that, and this is what we have seen consistently actually throughout our this PiCA Thesis Forum, which has brought to focus so far about 10 to 12 projects, in a very focused manner. And what we have seen is that that a lot of students go to a great deal of work, much beyond what is expected, even out of the curricular expectations. They go beyond the curricular expectations and do a far greater sort of an effort at the thesis level. So there is what it kind of tells us, as teachers, is that this is the great desire among so many students to excel, to excel beyond the call of what we would expect them from as teachers. So that is really heartening, and it is also something to something to think about for the coming generation of students, that when it comes to thesis, there is really no end to how much you can study, and how much you can to what extent you can take your resolution to, so really it's entirely up to your ambitions. So it's great to see both your works, both at the thesis level, and how, in your case, Vaishali, you have taken that into your professional credence as you're working now. So that's great.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah. A lot to me. Yeah. I think I remember talking to you when I was leaving for my master's, and you suggested me about UIC and the curriculum, and I got to know about healthcare there itself, and that is how I went ahead. So definitely, like, talking to you helped back then.
I would say, as teachers, we play a role, but our role is that way. I would say a minor role, because the work is done by you. If it is good work, it's done by you. If it is not good work, that's also done by you. So yeah, right. It's your work. It's how much you as a student is willing to extend yourself.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Venki sir, you want to say something? You are mute.
Okay. I wanted to ask a question. First is Siddhesh. Siddhesh, I've seen your drawings and all that. That's okay. But now, you say this type of outpatient care that is only for you, just within 24 hours, you're released back to your wherever you stay, your house. Now, if you have an operation theater facility, very complex designs and very fantastic research you've done. But, there is something called, pre-operation check and a post-operation check, which may take more than a day. So is that are you strictly following that 24 hours release?
There are certain like guidelines for these procedures to be done. So there are the procedures which can happen on daily basis, day care basis, are only considered as day procedures, and that only considered to be happening in this center. Like, there would be certain procedures which would take a longer time. So there are provisions made for those kind of treatments also. Like, if you are forced to stay for more than 24 hours, then you can stay inside the facility also.
Okay. Another question for Vaishali.
So,
yeah. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. Long time no see. So how are you?
Yes. So the thing is, is there a cure for HIV as yet in the US and all that? I mean, we don't know about it. I haven't read much about it. Is there a cure as yet in the US for HIV?
They have care centers for their living, but I don't know if there's a cure yet. They do have treatments, but I think something that I should look at, as you mentioned now. Yeah, I should see if that works. But I know about we did design my firm did design one treatment center for them.
Yeah,
so
yeah. the thing which I was asking, yeah, I'm sorry, this interrupt you actually. The thing which I was asking a little more, what I was saying was that this is what you have designed is a rehabilitation center or skill development center, or what exactly? I mean, are you just going to provide for some hospital or something like, or a treatment center for looking after these patients, or are you going to, I mean, like, are they going to stay there for a long time?
So coming back to your question, this was more of them living and getting treated. And when there is an urgency or a treatment urgency, when I decided the site, I looked at the quick hospitals nearby where they can get it. But this is more of the family who is abandoned. Like I saw people who are not with their family and need like a little consultation when they are living in there. That was more of that part, like the operation or a minor operation can be done, but then this was more of treatment and just being in the hospital and getting checked and consultations at the post treatment.
Okay, it's okay. It's all.
Thank you for the question, sir.
Thank you for the answer.
Yeah. One question to both of you. So is it very difficult to juggle between the services part of your hospital and the user needs and your creative response in design? So was it a big challenge compared to your colleagues who had less services intensive projects in when you were working on your dissertations in fifth year?
Siddhesh, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'd like to say a few things. Like it's constantly back and forth process. Like you go in with the design, then you put services into it, then you again change the design according to your services, and that's what majorly takes a lot of time, I feel. So it gets a bit difficult because you have to make a lot of changes after fitting your services into it, and that is the major reason that hospital buildings don't look fancy. But yeah, but it need more than a design aspect. I feel the functionality should be the main focus into such building.
Yeah. I think during I can go next. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Sorry about that. I thought you continued. Okay. So I think when I was designing, as I had other areas to work on, and it was not just a care center, I had a little bit of leverage, but I think I had a tough time just planning that one medical center. I didn't detail, like I couldn't enlarge it and show it, but like the whole circulation and functioning of just that one block was really intense, and I had to modify that multiple times, and the rest were like sorted. So I think services is important when it comes to healthcare, and it has to go hand in hand. You implement some, it works; it doesn't, you modify your design. I think initially in architecture we started with form, and then we came down to final year. It's like function follows form in somewhere. But yeah, there was a transition in our thoughts by the end of the thesis, I guess.
Great. Yeah, nice.
I have a question for Siddhesh. Siddhesh, would you like to talk a little more about your study of Rajawadi Hospital? Because what you did was not a simple case study in a conventional manner. It was almost like a mini research project. So why don't you tell us a little more about the study that you conducted at Rajawadi?
Yeah, okay. So basically, it was a large public hospital. I would say it basically 150 to 200 bedded hospital. So it has majorly all the services and all the facilities that I had provided in my own setup, except the inpatient part of the structure. So basically, the study was made to understand the space and the needs of the user. So starting with the study, I've visited the hospital quite a few times before I made the final presentation for the thesis report. So there were a lot of days when I went for the observations of just the space, the quality of the space. Then there were different days of time that I went, like in the morning how the space changes, in the afternoon how it changes, in the night how the crowd pattern changes. Then there was quite a large difference in the crowd pattern that we see in the outpatient and the other parts of the setup. So basically, the study was done on the basis of just finding the problems that exist in the current public hospital setup. May it be related to the functionality of the hospital, or may it be related to the feel or the look of the hospital, or may it be related to the how the person experiences the space. So basically, it was gathering detailed interviews and detailed comments from the users that use that space, and mostly doctors and the patients. So the survey questions that I showed you were like personally, like they were asked to the people using the space personally, and also they were circulated as online forms. So that basically gave me I guess 75 people survey, which formed the basis of calculating the averages and the most I guess the bad space quality, etc. So these 75 people or more than 75 people helped me recognize the positives and the negatives of that hospital, which I need to like the positives which I need to follow and the negatives which I don't need to follow, or to give a solution to that problem. So that was basically what I did for my research. And I feel it's quite important to do it as a research for each and every project that we do, because it gives you a direct first-hand information on how you should create a space or how you should not create a space, and what should you do to make it a better place for the user. That's it.
And I would say that the conclusions that you draw, as a result of the evidence-based design methodology, the conclusion, many of the conclusions that you draw are general and should be applied to actually all buildings. Things like right to natural light and ventilation, and you know the corridors being more active and stuff like that. So I think some of those design guidelines could be universal, especially in our tropical climate. Don't you think so?
Yeah, absolutely. Like while considering the design strategies, I feel it should be mostly passive design as we consider. Like most of the healthcare facilities that we check on right now are fully air conditioned, which is actually not required right now in a place like ours. So it is mandatory for a few departments that it needs a sterile environment. So those spaces can be kept as fully air conditioned, but rest of the spaces like the corridors or the public areas, walkways, etc., that can be completely kept as a passive design, which would actually help in like maintaining the space a bit better also. So I hope that answers.
I think I have something in addition to what Siddhesh said. As he talked about the circulation, the day and night variation and the spaces as per that. Professionally too, we actually follow it and it's surprising. And I mean, it is something that we should consider. It's not surprising actually, but we do have now, like for when we design healthcare, we have tools to examine that. Like we still follow the survey. We have questions for the workers out there. We get the answers of it. We put those answers and like we have simulation software like Flexim where we put that data and see how the circulation works whole day from day to night, and then we prioritize the spaces and how it can be. So I think that is the starting of how we research, and then professionally we get a medium to actually put those down and get like a more justified version of it, and that's what we implement. So yeah, that is definitely which it works out all throughout.
Very interesting to know that how the software are helping you in the user study, and then and hence into the design process as well, how this data is helping in this. So that's great. So I just want to now say that we've had this is the seventh session, and we've had uh, in these 7 sessions we've had 15 presentations and 15 different theses, and it was very interesting to see the research presented by our X-PiCAns, and when the students connected very well with their site context, the users, and really felt the nerves of their users or understood how they live, the conditions in which users live, and what are the challenges that the users are facing, and what socio-cultural background they come from. And so in all of this, like when the research is conducted in a very detailed manner and on-site, and context study is very rich, then the research itself gets more and more rich, and also the connection of research into the design also gets very mature. So I mean, this way, as I said, like we've seen these 15 theses. So to those faculty colleagues of mine, those who are present in or attended many of these sessions, uh, would you like to kind of like highlight on the learnings from any of these particular sessions from past, or even now, that anything that you particularly remember from previous sessions, um, or maybe like today's session or so, that you would like to comment on and highlight it to the students who are present here or would be looking at our session on YouTube later?
May I go first?
Yeah, go ahead, Kavita.
I wanted to say this, but you started with concluding the session. One thing I would like to highlight here is, Siddhesh, it was wonderful to know that how you got inspired by helping Vaishali in her thesis, and how the interest started developing regarding this topic in your mind. The interaction with the seniors is also part of the process, I think. And then this PiCA forum has brought such things in limelight. So I feel that this is also one of the takeaways or one of the learnings in this series, which I want students to kind of look into it and start, having interactions with your student, with your seniors, or
Yeah, I think it got cut. Yes.
Yeah, she's back.
Kavita, yeah, you're back. We lost you for a
Okay,
minute. Go ahead.
okay, I just said that such interactions, I would like to see more of such interactions to happen in PiCA.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was very fortunate and happy to know about Siddhesh presenting with me, because I remember he helped me out, and now we are together presenting our work, and it was kind of a continuation to what I did, and maybe a better version of it, with more nice graphics and more nice yeah, I was really impressed by that. But yeah, I think you excel one step when you learn from or get some inputs from someone.
Can I go second?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. This last 15 thesis presentations have been very good. For one particular thing stands out, that actually, if you want to do a good thesis, you have got to be very, very, you should be able to define the scope of your project very, very clearly. Then your research also becomes easy. Because mostly we find out, when actually in the initial stages in the 4th year and all that, when thesis topics are introduced and all that, we at that time, a lot of research really and lots of sort of back and forth information between faculty, between senior students, and all this thing should be there, because they have to define the scope of the project. They have to define the project itself, and the more clearer you define a project, the better your research also becomes. And that is one thing which actually not now, even I think I've said that to Siddhesh 2 years back also. But yeah, but it's a thing which is very important, because what happens is, by this time, there are still thesis students and all that who are not very clear exactly where they're heading. The one important thing which Siddhesh said was, it is actually what he said was, please try to pinpoint your field of interest, because that is what is going to take you beyond your thesis, like Vaishali is doing right now. So that's sort of a thing. I just wanted to mention that particular thing. Focus on your field of study and go into it very deeply, so that you know your scope of work. That's all. Thank you very much, Vaishali. Siddhesh.
Thank you. I think, on addition to what you said, sir, I think even I was very lost initially when I started. And thesis guide is someone who actually streamlines your thought a lot. I mean, there's so much of learning in 5 years that you have in your head that you want to put everything out there. But it's possible. You have to reduce down, talk it out, see how you want to maybe path your thesis up. And that actually helps when you talk to your guide or even any professor if you have some ideas in there. So I think conversation and interaction definitely helps when you have like many multiple ideas. But yeah, I was pretty lost when I started, for sure. And then after like maybe 2-3 months, I got like that hold of it that I know where I'm going now.
Great. That should give you some ideas, Kavita Pradhan, because I mean, you can have another series of seminars to open up minds of the future thesis people.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, Kavita, I in fact already expressed my views partly initially about the whole experience of PiCA Thesis Forum, and personally, I think it has been a very enjoyable experience for me. I really enjoyed. I think I missed one session out of the 7. I had some other engagement, but it has been really a delight, to hear our students. So thank you very much for everybody who was responsible for organizing it, and all the students, all our ex-students who participated in it. So nice, and I would also kind of say something here. I differ slightly from Venki sir. I would say that defining the scope of one's project, it happens gradually. It need not happen at the beginning, because it's a journey. A research is a journey, and Vaishali said that she was confused at the beginning. Most of my students were confused at the beginning, and it is not a bad thing to be confused at the beginning stage. Of course, you have to know which area you want to research into. So you need to select the area of your research. For these two, they chose the area as healthcare facilities. But as is evident from both their trajectory, their research trajectory was quite different actually. They went into researching quite different aspects, So it's I would say that it is better that one defines the scope of the project as one goes through the several iterations of the steps of discussions, cross discussions, and kind of all the time revising one step, rather than being so short right at the beginning. So some students maybe, and that would be nice for them. But if you are not 100% sure at the beginning, that's the sky is not going to fall. In fact, keep you more prompt in your journey. So yeah.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Ma'am, Sudhna ma'am is there. You want to say something, or Jinu? Or maybe not.
Yeah, hi Kavita, Jinu here. I'm sorry, Siddhesh and Vaishali, I joined your session, right towards the end, so I'm not able to contextualize anything to what they presented, but I think this is a more kind of a general sort of a roundup of the last,
Yes.
of this entire series so far.
Correct.
So yeah, I echo the opinions of all the other faculty members who have spoken before me. That this series has been great. It's good to bring conversations about dissertation and thesis into a forum like this. It's in a way it's like you're creating some kind of an archive also in the process. Right, and that's something that is quite. It's quite delightful to have that. 1 year from now, when people look at this, they'll still have something to take back. So because these are things that get embedded, and we've not been very good as an institute in doing all these things, but I think now, we're finally getting to situations like this, so which is great. I think I really appreciate all the people who put this together, and also all the presenters. I think we've had some fascinating presentations, and I'm sure the generations of PiCAns will continue to look at this and feel inspired. And about dissertation in general, I think I'm also in agreement with what the ma'am said about it's okay being a little here and there about your dissertation, and then sort of slowly and gradually sharpening focus onto a particular research field, and then in that research field you then start sharpening your focus onto some critical issues, and then look at ways in which you can frame a design problem around it, and then I think that's okay, and at the same time it's okay to be very clear also. I guess people can choose what they want. We've typically chosen an approach where we know right from the beginning what we want to do. But I think alternative approaches are where you conduct an inquiry and then get into something is also very valid, I think. So yeah, I think that's it from me. Congratulations to, I think, Kavita. You can pat yourself on the back, and this has been a good series. Siddhesh and Vaishali, I'm sorry, I will catch your presentations later on YouTube, but best wishes to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jinu. Thanks. Okay. So I think we are looking at now ending this, and we will come back in the next season with more thesis dissertations from the senior batches, as well as in next year we will also have the recent batch who, once they graduate, they would also be looking at presenting on this platform. And this the discussion we hope to keep going in the next season as well, because as we talk more about dissertations, and if there is like more discussion about between the X-PiCAns and the current students and faculty, it gets more richer, and we have our ideas more clear, so it's beneficial for everyone. So now we would like to take a break from this season of PiCA Thesis Forum, and looking forward to again coming back next season. Thank you very much, Smita ma'am. Thank you, Venki sir.